Moment in every life, yes, every single one of us, when we look around and feel the emptiness of what used to be. A moment when we carry the silent weight of what was lost. Relationships that faded, health that failed, finances that slipped away, time that can't be reclaimed. We walk through the valley of grief with tears in our eyes and questions in our hearts. But I declare to you today, with fire in my spirit and unshakable conviction in my soul, God will give you back what you have lost in your life. This is not a hollow promise. This is not the wishful thinking of the weak. This is the unbreakable truth of a mighty God who never forgets what the enemy stole from his faithful ones. When God sees what has been taken from you, when he sees the years that were wasted, the betrayals that left you broken, the dreams that were buried in pain, he does not sit silent. He does not look away. No, God stands ready to restore, to revive, and to redeem everything that was taken. And when God gives back, he does not return it as it was. He multiplies it. He strengthens it. He makes it new. You may have lost people you love, but God has not left you loveless. You may have lost opportunities, but God is not finished writing your story. You may have lost confidence, hope, peace, but listen to me now. God is the restorer of broken years, the healer of torn hearts, and the provider of new beginnings. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. God has watched every tear fall. God has felt every ache in your heart. And God will not let your loss be the end of the story. There is power in trusting God even when you don't understand. There is power in standing firm even when the winds of life have tried to blow you over. There is power in faith that refuses to bow to discouragement. Because when you put your hope in God, when you say, even though I've lost much, I still trust God to restore, that is when God moves in your life in a mighty way. That is when the heavens shift. That is when the impossible becomes reality. God is not a God who abandons. God is not a God who turns his back when life gets hard. No, God leans in closer to the brokenhearted. God draws near to the weary. When you're walking through the rubble of what used to be, God walks with you. And he speaks this truth into your soul. I will give you back what you lost. I will turn your mourning into dancing. I will lift you from the ashes and set you among the blessed. Do not measure your future by your past. Do not look at the wreckage and think that's all there will ever be. You may be standing in loss right now, but you serve a God who specializes in restoration. God does not see your situation as hopeless. He sees it as the perfect place for a miracle. What you see is broken, God sees as the beginning of something glorious. What you call the end, God calls the foundation. So many walk around feeling like their best days are behind them. But I say to you, your best days are not in the past. They are ahead of you because God is not done. God is still writing your future. God is still working behind the scenes. God is preparing blessings that will chase you down, favor that will find you, peace that will fill you, and restoration that will shock those who thought you were finished. So you will promise, for you will know. You may have been lied to, you may have been betrayed, you may have lost everything you thought you needed. But God says, I am enough. And when God steps in, the impossible bows down, the wounds begin to heal. The shattered pieces begin to form a new creation. You do not serve a small God, you serve a mighty, unstoppable, mountain-moving God. And that God will give you back what was stolen, not out of pity, but out of purpose. And you didn't go through that loss for no reason. You didn't survive that betrayal for no purpose. You didn't cry those tears for nothing. God allowed what was taken to set the stage for what is coming. He allowed the pain to make room for the promise. He allowed the breaking to lead to the blessing. So don't you dare give up. Don't you dare sit down in sorrow. Get up in faith and believe that God is about to give you more than you had before. And let me tell you something the enemy doesn't want you to hear. What God gives you back will not only restore what was lost, it will elevate you to a place you never thought you could reach. Because God is not in the business of bringing you back to where you were. He's in the business of taking you higher, stretching your faith, enlarging your territory, and proving to you and the world that He alone is God. Do not confuse delay with denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. God works in His own time, and when that time comes, no devil in hell can stop it. When the time comes, the door will open, the blessing will come, the healing will rush in like a river, and everyone who saw you struggle will witness the glory of God on your life. You may be in the waiting room of life right now. You may be looking at empty hands and wondering when they will be filled again. But I urge you, wait with faith, not fear. Wait with hope, not despair. Because God has never failed, not once, and He will not fail you. If He took you through the fire, He will bring you out. If He allowed the loss, He will restore the gain. And when He does, you will say, only God could have done this. Every great story of faith was born out of loss. Every powerful testimony began in a season of brokenness. But God steps into the middle of that mess and begins to breathe life. He takes the things you thought were dead and brings them back to life. He takes the years that were stolen and makes them more fruitful than ever before. God is not intimidated by how bad it looks. He's not discouraged by how long it's been. God is ready to move. Even now, even in this moment, while you're listening to these words, God is stirring something in your life. You may not feel it, you may not see it, but trust this, God is setting things in motion. He's calling hearts to change. He's moving people into position. He's aligning moments of favor that will open new doors, and all of it, every step, is part of His divine plan to give you back what was lost. You must understand, when God chooses to restore, He does not simply return what was taken. He redeems it with purpose. That pain you endured, that season of lack, that heartbreak and confusion, God takes it all and turns it into power. He converts tears into testimonies and wounds into wisdom. When others look at your life and see the scars, they will not see defeat. They will see proof that God was with you the entire time, that even in loss, you were never alone. Some of you have been holding on by a thread. You've said in silence, God, I don't know how much more I can take. But I say to you today, you are closer to restoration than you realize. You are closer to divine compensation than you can imagine. God hears the silent cries, the prayers whispered into your pillow, the groans too deep for words, and God responds, not always in the way you expect, but always in the way that's best for your soul. There are no accidents with God. If something was removed from your life, it is because God saw what you could not. If someone walked away, it is because God is making room for someone better. If a door closed, it is because that door could not lead you to your destiny. You may have lost something you thought you needed, but God will replace it with something you were created for. God's restoration doesn't just satisfy, it exceeds. And let me tell you, when God is about to restore, it often feels like everything is falling apart. That's when the ground shakes. That's when people start changing. That's when confusion rises. But don't be deceived by the chaos. Don't be discouraged by the shaking. God is simply rearranging the pieces. He is breaking down the old to build up the new. He is tearing down the false to make way for the true. Sometimes, before God gives back, He has to clear the clutter, remove the counterfeit, and silence the noise. There are seasons when God allows loss to awaken your dependence on Him. Because sometimes it is only when everything else is gone that you finally realize that God is everything you truly need. And in that moment of awakening, you become positioned for divine restoration. You become a vessel that is no longer trying to live off your own strength, but fully surrendered to the strength of God alone. You must stop measuring God's faithfulness by your timeline. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are higher. When you look at your life and say it's too late, God says, I'm just getting started. When you look at your age, your situation, your mistakes, and think the damage is beyond repair, God sees opportunity for a miracle so mighty, so undeniable, that no one will be able to take credit but God alone. Do not let the enemy convince you that the loss was the end. That is the lie of darkness. The enemy wants you to settle in sorrow, to build a home in the valley of despair. But you were not made to live in the land of loss. You were made to rise. You were made to be renewed. You were made to walk out of that grave of grief with a spirit full of power. You were made to be a living witness to the goodness of God, who restores, revives, and repositions. There is a power that comes when you praise God in the middle of your pain. There is a shift that happens when, instead of complaining about what you've lost, you start declaring what God is about to do. Praise in the pit shakes the foundation of your future. Gratitude in grief summons divine intervention. When you say, God, I still trust you even now, you invite the supernatural into your natural. You see, God is not looking for perfection. God is looking for faith. The kind of faith that says, even though I don't see the answer, I know God is working. The kind of faith that says, even though I feel alone, I know God is near. The kind of faith that doesn't wait for the restoration to begin praising, but praises as if it's already done. Because with God, it is. There are blessings with your name on them that have not yet been delivered, not because God has forgotten you, but because He is preparing you to carry them. God will never release a blessing that will crush you. He strengthens your character before He returns what was lost. He stretches your faith before He brings the breakthrough. He deepens your trust before He gives you double for your trouble. And once the preparation is complete, the restoration comes like a flood. Some of you are asking, why did it take so long? Let me answer with truth. Because God is not interested in quick fixes. God is interested in eternal foundations. What God is doing in your life is not small, it is not temporary, it is not fragile. It is strong, it is lasting, it is sacred, and because of that it requires time. Trust the process, trust the plan, trust the promise. When God restores, He also refines. He doesn't just return what was lost, He cleanses what was broken. He renews your mind, He reshapes your thinking, He purifies your motives, so that when you receive the restoration, you're not just returning to where you were, you're stepping into who you were always meant to be. You may think I've lost years, but God can restore years. You may think I've lost reputation, but God can lift your name higher than it ever was. You may think I've lost family, peace, identity, but hear this now. God can rebuild what was torn down even from ashes. Even if everything burned to the ground, God can raise up something more beautiful than what once stood. That is the power of divine restoration. Some of the most powerful people you will ever meet are not the ones who never lost anything. They are the ones who lost everything, yet still chose to believe, still chose to trust, still chose to hope. And because they did, God honored their faith with restoration beyond what they could have imagined. When God begins to restore, it's not just a matter of replacing what was taken. It's a divine rearranging of your destiny. It's God stepping into the ruins of your disappointment and building a foundation that cannot be shaken. You see, the loss wasn't sent to destroy you. It was sent to reveal the strength that only comes from God. The stripping away was necessary to make room for the sacred. The pruning was painful, but it was purposeful. For God does not plant without intention, and He does not allow loss without the promise of greater gain. You must understand something deep, something that pierces the soul. Every loss in your life that drew you closer to God was not really a loss, it was a blessing in disguise. When God removes something, He's protecting your spirit from contamination. When something slips from your grasp, it may be because it could not carry you to your next season. God is too wise to be mistaken and too faithful to abandon you in your brokenness. What you thought was the end, God sees as the beginning of transformation. Sometimes it takes losing everything to see that God is the only one who never changes, the only one who stays, the only one who restores not just what was taken, but restores with wisdom, maturity, clarity, and divine favor. Some of the most precious things you gain in life come through what you lost. God will use your wilderness to sharpen your walk. He will use your silence to sharpen your spirit. He will use your pain to expand your purpose. There are doors that close not because you were unworthy, but because God had something better. There are people who left not because you were unlovable, but because God saw their presence would hinder your peace. Do not mourn the chapters God has ended. Rejoice that He is the author who writes with redemption. When others give up on you, God steps in and says, I will restore, I will renew, I will raise you up again. And when God raises you up, it won't be subtle. It won't be hidden. It won't be quiet. God will make it known. The same people who saw you at your lowest will see the evidence of divine restoration in your life. The same ones who mocked your pain will witness your rising. Because God does not restore you in secret, He blesses you in the open. He honors you where you were once humiliated. He lifts you where you were once overlooked. Who glorifies His name through your comeback. Some of you are in a place right now where you don't even know what to pray. You've lost so much, cried so much, struggled so much that words feel empty. But let me tell you this truth. God hears the prayer of the heart. God sees the prayer of the soul. God recognizes faith even when it is silent. And that silent faith, that unwavering trust, that mustard seed of hope, that is what moves mountains. That is what invites restoration. Do not compare your life to others. Do not measure your worth by what others have gained. You don't know what God is protecting you from. You don't see the storms He already stopped. You don't see the traps He already destroyed. While others may seem to be rising quickly, remember, what rises fast may fall just as fast. But what God builds in patience, what He restores in quiet seasons, stands the test of time. Let this truth settle in your spirit. God doesn't restore just for you. He restores through you. Your life becomes a light. Your survival becomes someone else's strength. When you walk in restoration, you carry a testimony that reaches beyond your pain. God turns your life into a message of hope for those who feel forgotten. He uses your healing to point others toward His power. You don't just get back what you lost. You gain the ability to guide others to the one who restores all. You may have lost time, but God can redeem time. You may have lost youth, but God can renew strength. You may have lost relationships, but God can fill the emptiness with peace that passes understanding. You may have lost your way, but if you're listening now, if your heart is still open, then God has already started the process of restoration. The very fact that you're still breathing means restoration is still possible. Your story is not over. The ink is not dry. God is still writing. And when God restores, He restores in layers. First, He restores your soul. He breathes new life into your spirit. He quiets your restlessness. He reminds you of who you are and whose you are. Then He restores your mind, cleansing you of toxic thoughts, calming your anxiety, renewing your perspective. Then He restores your surroundings, aligning your steps, guiding your path, opening doors that no man can shut. But let me warn you, restoration doesn't always look like what you expect. Sometimes God gives you back something in a different form. You lost one opportunity, and He gives you another with more purpose. You lost a relationship, and He replaces it with peace and clarity. You lost a position, and He gives you a platform to influence more souls than you ever could have in your previous state. Restoration is not just about retrieval, it's about elevation. So many people settle in sorrow because they think what was lost cannot be replaced. But you must reject that lie. You must rise up in faith and declare, God will give me beauty for ashes. God will restore my soul. God will return what was taken and more. Speak it, believe it, expect it. Because what you expect in faith, God will often deliver beyond. You must walk like restoration is coming, speak like healing is on its way, live like favor is surrounding you, because God responds to faith. Not fear, not doubt, but faith, the kind of faith that says, even if I lost everything, God is still good. Even if it hurts, I still trust God to restore what's mine. That is the kind of faith that opens heaven. That is the kind of faith that brings divine compensation. And I tell you now from the depths of my soul, from the fire that God has placed in my spirit, what God is going to return to you will be better, bigger, and more blessed than what was lost. You're not just going to recover, you're going to rise. You're not just going to get back what was taken, you're going to walk into overflow. God does not settle debts. He pays them back with interest. The years you cried, the nights you couldn't sleep, the doors that slammed in your face, the rejection, the pain, the confusion, none of it is wasted. God sees it all. And when He restores, it will all make sense. Even the silence had purpose. Even the delays were divine. Even the detours were direction. Because God is not a man. He does not forget, he does not lie, and he never makes mistakes. You are right where he needs you to be. He's preparing the table, he's setting the stage, and when the time comes, when his appointed hour arrives, you will walk into a restoration that no human hand can take credit for. When God restores, he doesn't simply patch up the broken, he rebuilds with purpose. He doesn't just fix what was shattered, he constructs something that carries your future. What was lost was never greater than what is coming, and God is not rushing, because what he is preparing for you is not temporary comfort, but eternal impact. The fire you walk through will not leave you in ashes. It will leave you refined, purified, unshakable, and ready for what only God can place in your hand. You must stop looking back with regret and start looking forward with divine expectation. God does not operate in reverse. The past is not your dwelling place, it is your classroom. The pain taught you, the loss shaped you, the season of silence trained your ears to hear only God's voice. And now you are being positioned, not by chance, not by coincidence, but by the direct hand of God, who restores with holy precision. You may feel like you've been forgotten, passed over, cast aside, but God is not bound by the opinions of others. He does not choose based on what people say about you. He chooses based on the purity of your heart, your faith in the unseen, and your endurance through the trial. And when God says it's time, nothing can stop the restoration. No enemy, no betrayal, no mistake, no delay. When God says now, the doors open, the healing flows, the favor surrounds you like a shield. There are seasons when you will walk through loss and think, God, why did you let this happen? And in those moments, you may not get an answer, but you will get something better. You will get God himself, his presence, his power, his peace. And when you have God, you have everything. When you walk with God, what you lost cannot compare to what he is about to do. For what you lost was for a time, but what he restores will echo into eternity. Sometimes God will let you be emptied so that only he can fill you. He will allow the things you depended on to fall away so that your trust is in him alone. He will remove the distractions, silence the noise, and let you stand still so that in the quiet you can hear him whisper, I am still here. God is not in the business of temporary relief. He is in the business of permanent transformation. And I say to you now, what God is preparing to return to your life will not resemble what you lost. It will be greater, because it will come from his hand, not man's. It will come with no sorrow attached. It will come wrapped in peace. It will come dressed in power. It will come covered in purpose. You may not understand how or when, but you can be certain of who. And that is enough. Do not give in to hopelessness. Do not sit in the shadows of yesterday. Do not let fear make your decisions. You are not abandoned. You are not invisible. You are not forsaken. You are held by the hand of God, who is preparing something in the silence, in the shadows, in the places no one sees. Restoration begins before the world notices it. It starts in the unseen, and then it bursts forth into glory. God is not waiting for your circumstances to change. He is waiting for your faith to rise. Because faith is the access point. It is the key. When you believe, even when everything seems empty, God begins to move. When you expect his goodness despite your loss, the doors begin to shake open. When you say, God, I don't know how, but I know you will, you invite a power into your life that no force can resist. You must walk differently when you believe restoration is coming. You must talk differently, think differently, pray differently, speak like the breakthrough has already arrived, think like the doors are already open, live like God is already returning what was taken. Because he is, even now. Even in this moment, things are shifting. The spiritual realm is moving. The delay is ending. The drought is breaking. And the floodgates of restoration are preparing to pour. Do not curse your broken season. It was necessary. It prepared you. It revealed who was real. It exposed who was temporary. It showed you what you needed and what you didn't. And above all, it brought you closer to God. And that alone makes the pain worthwhile. Because when everything is stripped away and all that remains is your faith in God, that is where true power begins. The world may have turned its back. People may have betrayed you. Circumstances may have crushed you. But God has remained. God has stayed. God has watched. and God is rising on your behalf. The time for mourning is closing. The time for rejoicing is drawing near. The time of rebuilding is at hand. Your name is being remembered. Your tears are being counted. Your prayers are being answered. You have not suffered in vain. You have not endured for nothing. God is going to use every ounce of it. The rejection, the delay, the loss, the waiting. Every chapter will become a platform. Every scar will become a badge of honor. And every word spoken against you will fall powerless when God begins to move in your favor. You must walk into this new season with holy boldness, not with fear, not with apology, but with a confidence that comes from knowing that God is your restorer, not man, not systems, not your own effort, but God. And what God restores, no